Welcome to Second Look Education. I'm Amy.
And I'm Candace.
We're educators examining what's really happening in classrooms, policy, and teacher preparation. When joy is treated as optional, when professional judgment is replaced by scripts, and when compliance is mistaken for quality, both teachers and children pay the cost.
This podcast is our refusal to normalize that. Are we educating for compliance or for a future of educated critical thinkers?
That question drives everything we do. Each episode starts with a real moment from education, something observed, experienced, or encountered that made us pause and ask, what's actually going on here?
We dig into the complexity, we reject false binaries, and we refuse to pretend that what we're seeing is sustainable. This is Second Look Education.
Welcome back to Second Look Education Podcast. Today we're going to be taking a second look with a moment that Amy is sharing, and I think this one will resonate with almost all of us.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's the goal. So I flip the calendar to July and I get this knot in the pit of my stomach because somehow I feel behind. And it's not, obviously school hasn't started back up yet. It's not that anything's wrong, but summer is moving at this speed of lightning, it feels like, and I can't quite point to anything that I've done with it. And so it's this almost anxiety-ish feeling when I flip the calendar, but summer is supposed to be this more spacious time of year. I don't have to get the kids up for school and make lunches and all of our rigid morning routines, and I'm only teaching one class online compared to the school year. It's lighter. It's a much lighter load, and I feel like every day is getting away from me. And so I keep thinking about all of the things that I want summer to hold. There's so much reading I want to do, and writing and creative things, and being outside, and of course planning for the fall and getting my things ready for our classes that are coming up and the kids and getting ahead. And that's what keeps coming. It's this getting ahead. I feel like I got to get ahead in the summer. And so then it makes me think okay, if it's something that I can get ahead at, that summer is something I'm falling behind in. It's just is that real? This pressure that I put on myself to get ahead, I also have been noticing that I am projecting it onto my kids. So things are they reading enough? Are they going outside enough? Are they doing enough? What are we doing with this precious time that we have? These open hours. And so, again, nothing's actually wrong. The kids are being kids, but I still feel myself almost scanning our days for proof that we're being productive. Do you ever feel like that?
Yeah. Well, so I'm thinking as you're talking about this, it's inside. There's nothing external that's saying that we have to do these things, but internally it says these things. And I just was talking to another mom who shared something similar, and she said, I feel like she's got 3 little girls, and she said, I need to have them doing workbooks and trying to get them either ahead or not losing information. Mm-hmm. And then, I should probably be working on spelling with one and math with the other and all these things. And I finally just said to her, just have them read some books they're into. When she said one of her daughters has a little bit harder of a time, so I said, read with her, but look for things that they enjoy.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be work. I love to read for fun. Mm-hmm. And this. There's this pressure of, in the summer, we could get ahead because, and I loved what you just said about falling behind. If you can't get ahead, what are we getting ahead for if we can't just enjoy the moment? And it's this, you tell yourself this. I always say the front of my brain is hey, this makes sense. You're supposed to relax. It's summertime. We're supposed to be just having some downtime. There is supposed to be quiet and pause. But then the back of my brain's these are things you don't have time for normally.
Yeah.
And so we've got to hurry up and get these things done. And I think there is a teacher-driven part of that, a parent-driven part of that, a mom-driven part of that. And I do think, you have younger kids than I do. And so it adjusts slightly when your kids aren't around as much, like mine aren't. And when my kids were younger, though, I just shared with somebody, I remember someone saying to me, is there ever a day you're not doing something with the kids? And I was you're right. There isn't that day of, I was I felt like I had to plan everything. Right. All the things I wish I did because we couldn't get it all in. And then there was their sports and all these expectations that we put on ourselves and then we wonder why, like, we're tired.
So that's it, right? Like you said, you take the kids, like we go to the library every week. We have memberships at like the pool and the zoo and things like that. Their friends are over all the time. They bike, they do chores, they cook, they fight, they build forts, these amazing forts. They make up games. This is one of my favorite things to watch, is like when they're bored enough and they start making up games. You know, they go to the parks. You know, I send them to the pond, go to the pond and play. So the question isn't like, are they doing anything? They are doing things. And so I started asking this, like, why doesn't it feel like enough? So I know that children learn outside of school. Absolutely, hands down, I know that. And I know that teachers need rest. But the thing that I know, but I can't seem to like really grasp is this: I know that I don't have to earn every moment of recovery. And yet I find myself trying to like justify it. And so our kind of like anchor question for the episode today is, one, what do we think summer is for? And then underneath that is this, like, what kinds of growth are we overlooking because they're harder to measure? And that's what I'm going to dig into with the kids, definitely. But then we'll also parallel with the teachers, because I don't think it's just about, you know, like summer reading and teachers needing a break. And it's something deeper that's connecting those conversations. So like you mentioned, as parents, we worry about if our kids are doing enough. And as educators, we worry about if we're doing enough. And somewhere in the middle, it's this, what do we think summer is for? So hopefully during our conversation today, we'll unpack this a little more.
You know what it makes me kind of think of? That movie Bad Moms, where she just finally has a meltdown and she's like, I just can't anymore. And I think that's like the point that we don't want to get to, is like where, I mean, teachers already come off the school year. And I know for me, especially when I was in a full-time classroom, the school year would end and everybody thinks you like jump into summer and it's just like freedom. But it's more like, okay, I need to nap for the next 2 weeks and then I need to go hard.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and then July hits and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to get all these things in.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So again, nothing's actually wrong. My kids aren't struggling. I'm not overwhelmed with work right now. Nobody's really falling behind. There's no crisis, thank goodness, right now to solve. But I still feel like we should be doing more with the freedom that we're given in summer as teachers and kids. And like, maybe we should be doing more reading, like you mentioned, more activities, more maybe I should be more intentional with our days. You know, maybe I should schedule this out and plan for fall, and all of these things that I think about is like, it's all built on this improvement. Like we're constantly needing to feel like I'm doing something productive and I'm improving. And so summer feels like this project. Why am I treating summer like something that I need to optimize? Free time is feeling like unfinished work. It's this bizarro feeling. And been teaching for over 20 years now, and every summer I feel the same. And what I finally think is going on here is this like guilt. I have this guilt about my career. Teaching, right, is one of those professions where summer becomes a public conversation. Everybody's got an opinion on teachers having a summer break, right? We joke about it, we question it, we defend it, and we're constantly reminded that teachers have this thing that other people don't. That you are privileged in some way, right, because you have this summer, and that's that guilt that makes me feel like I think I have to justify my summer. Am I doing enough? Yeah, I get the summer off, but here's all the things I did over the summer.
I was thinking about, as you said that, I think the guilt too is that during the school year, teaching is such a draining job emotionally and mentally that you don't feel like as productive with your kids, or even if you don't have kids, you know, you don't feel productive around the home or with other people or catching up with friends because you're oftentimes tired, so you don't maybe do as much. And I think that's it too. It's like summers when I do all the things, I see all the people, I make sure all the people that I don't normally see I do, I visit the places I'd like to go, and it's almost like, and you know, you see them all over, you know, different social media sites, it's like this bucket list for summer. And I'm not saying we don't need to live it up, but at the same time, like the pressure of it takes away the enjoyment of it. When I was a principal, I had this discussion. We were at a summer PD, but it was an amazing summer PD. The teachers chose it. They actually wanted to go to this one. And I was on a walk with one of the teachers, and we were talking, and I said, you know, after this summer, I want to have a different impression going in. Now, admins work over the summer, but it's a much lighter load. Yeah. And I said, I am not going to treat the end of summer like the end of everything. I'm going to go into the school year, and I'm going to tell myself, like, I still should see my friends. Yeah. I should still contact people in my life that are important. I should still have some fun with my kids and enjoy things and still get some stuff done around the house. Not all at once, but... And so I had this conversation with this person, and then we checked in about halfway through the school year. I'm like, yeah, I tried.
I tried.
You know, I'm tired now.
Right. It's almost like you feel like you're making up for lost time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like I'm trying to justify my summer all the time. I think that's part of why I always worked in the summer. I always picked up summer school, teach classes, or like you mentioned, the PD in the summer. There's always something. And it's not that I didn't enjoy those things. I did and I do. If you want to work in the summer, of course you should. But I think that part of me has always been trying to just justify my worth or my guilt, around that.
Well, you said earning your recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to earn my freedom instead of just accepting it, and I have to prove that I'm being productive.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's the Capricorn in me that feels like I need to just do, but I don't think I'm alone, really, because like you mentioned, you're hearing versions of this, I hear versions of this.
I mean, even for myself, we're both doing some work over the summer, and I'm still like, but I could also be doing this, and I should be doing this, and oh my gosh, it's the end of summer, and I've got to hurry up. And my husband called me out the other day. He's like, it's still summer. What are you doing? And I guess I've always been like this, and it's just more noticeable now because I don't have the kids as my excuse. Like, oh, the kids and I have to do all this stuff.
Yeah. And that's why I brought it here to talk about. It's more than just one moment. It's this collective summer that I'm thinking about. But the message feels familiar, right? We're going to use our time wisely. We're not going to waste it. We're going to get ahead, stay on track, and like make it count, right? We're going to make it count this summer. This is going to be the summer. But I think that maybe summer removes the structure that we have during the school year. Because during the school year, we have like schedules and benchmarks and deadlines and evidence that we're moving forward. And so summer takes a lot of that away. So we're left with this, like, how do I know things are okay if I'm not measuring the progress? And the
uncomfortability of not having the routines.
Yeah.
Teachers are, let's be honest, teachers, there is a certain personality type that is a teacher. And as much as we say we don't like routines, there is a part of us that is comfortable in those routines and knowing and having a little bit semblance of control. And I think so this freedom is great, but then it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. This measurement thing that I'm talking about is, how do I know if things are okay if I can't measure them? And also, have I started to confuse this visible progress with actual development? And I feel like this is going on like in subconsciously. Like, it's not overtly like, I can't see my kids' scores and read it. It's not that. I think it's more like a kind of a self-imposed like progress. Are we making progress? And for myself and then my kids, they're like mirrors of my same kind of feelings about summer. Like I mentioned, are they doing enough? Are they learning enough? Again, the problem isn't that they're not doing anything. They're doing a lot, but it's that, like, does it count? Because I can't measure anything specific. So I started digging into like what this all means, where does this come from, and I started reading about summer itself, like the history of summer. The first thing that surprised me about this, though, is the story. So if someone asked me a few weeks ago before I started looking into this, why do we have summer break? My answer, I wouldn't have hesitated. I got to know what your answer is. Why do we have summer break?
Well, historically, it was for farming.
Kids helped on farms. Case closed. That's why we have summer, right? That's the
story we've been told.
Absolutely. And it's not that it's wrong. It really isn't. But it's one of those things that we've heard our entire lives, and we've probably repeated it without questioning it, right? But when I started reading about it, actually like digging into it, it's much more complicated than that. Of course, like things are. And it wasn't that, like I said, the farming story isn't completely wrong. It's that there never was one traditional school calendar. So as early as 1684, one Massachusetts grammar school required 12 months of education. And then by 1841, Boston schools opened up 244 days a year, and Philadelphia operated 251 days a year. Okay? And then even some large urban schools were open almost year-round. And at the same time, There were many rural schools operating under 6-month calendars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and some communities...
That's a huge discrepancy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some communities adjusted their schedules around the harvest seasons, like we've come to think about, and others were constrained by like weather conditions or the financial realities of that district, because remember, districts are financially controlled locally. And so, there, like I said, there wasn't one school calendar. There were many school calendars. And the 180 days that we have now, the 180-day school calendar that feels really familiar to us, was only after decades of variation and standardization. We came to this point after, it wasn't like we inherited this school is 180 days, we're 9 months a year. We didn't inherit a tradition. It was constructed over time, like many things are. But that wasn't the story that I thought I knew. I was like, well, the calendar is inevitable. We get summers off because somewhere along the line here in the United States, kids needed to be on farms or something like that, It's not. It was the result of decisions. And so it kind of gets me thinking about, like, people were asking questions like this that we still talk about today, like, where does learning happen? What should childhood make room for? And though the details of the questions have changed, what we need from our schools has changed. I mean, notice the difference between, what was it, almost 12 months and 250 days a year down to 180, but that changed because of what the community needed, not necessarily this like strict hard and fast rules. So I went from this like, why do we have summer break? Because, well, we kind of know now, it's just because that's what we determined after years and years, to like, what is it for? Like, so what are we doing with this? And so as I'm reading through, it seems to me like summer is supposed to protect this academic progress. And so then I started looking at another thing that comes up when we talk about summer a lot is summer learning loss for children. You kind of even mentioned
well,
this
I mean,
earlier.
it comes into this whole debate about as you were talking, I was thinking about when they start bringing up year-round school again, and when that comes up, and the benefits or lack thereof. And then even the current changes in the way the school calendar works, because you used to have those snow days and now, not to get into the whole remote days thing, but like now your remote days count for those, so we don't have all those snow days anymore. And so it almost feels like we're starting a little earlier but getting out earlier, and just the way society kind of starts to make those adjustments and changes.
Yeah. So if summer is like about protecting academic progress, then I thought, okay, well, then I'm going in the literature, I'm going to look at summer learning loss, and I'm going to find a definitive answer. Because, again, that's kind of something that I've repeated. Like, there is some summer slide,
Yeah, and we hear it that when we come back, and, when you go back to school for your PDs, they talk about, like, how to get kids back on track from that summer learning loss, and different levels of different kids because of what they maybe are not doing at home. And so, like, you talk about that the minute you go back.
Yeah. But of course, the literature isn't cut and dried. It's not problem solved. Much of what we know about summer learning loss traces back to research conducted in the 70s and 80s, and then it was later synthesized by Harris Cooper and his colleagues in this landmark 1996 meta-analysis. Okay, so they looked at a bunch of studies and came up with some determinations about learning loss in the 90s. And so Cooper concluded that students lost approximately 1 month of school year learning over summer on average, that math losses appeared larger than reading losses, and reading losses were particularly concentrated among students from lower income families. So, and this is the review that has been enormously influential for us, right? And so that's where this came from. And so, like I said, in many years, this has helped establish the story that educators have been telling, ourselves about summer for the last 30 years, that children lose learning over the summer, that summer creates these achievement gaps, and that schools need to intervene. That's what you're talking about. When we come back, what are we going to do? Or what are we going to do during the summer to make sure they don't have that? And that, before I started digging into that, was my story too. That's what I believe. But then I started looking at newer research. So this is where things kind of got a little more complicated, because like in 2019, researchers analyzed NWEA MAP growth data. And so NWEA MAP is a assessment system that a lot of actually districts in our area use.
It's taken 3 times a year.
So they looked at growth data from approximately 3.5 million students. And their findings suggested the summer slide was real, particularly in math, but they also argued that the reality was much more nuanced than our traditional narrative from the 90s, that students did not all experience summer in the same way. Right. And we would, we would expect that, right? Patterns varied, growth varied, losses varied. Of course, it wasn't as straightforward as we assumed. And then that same year, in 2019, other researchers published a nationally representative study examining achievement patterns between kindergarten and first grade. So just a small sample. But what they found was kind of surprising, is that only 7% of students showed losses equivalent to 1 month of learning, and only 9% showed comparable losses in math. So the thing is, like, those differences from what we traditionally think, like, oh, everybody has this big summer, it's actually very small. You know, with thinking 7%, 9% of kids have like 1 month maybe of learning loss. It's not as big of a gap as we had thought. Anyway, as with any research, researchers disagree, right? That's not the issue. Like, that didn't surprise me at all. It's just not a settled body of research like we thought it was.
Well, but like, here's the thing. When I think about this, we're talking about huge variables like rural communities, suburban communities, urban communities that still vary within the urban communities. And so we have folks who maybe their parents do feel that need to have summer tutors and summer camps and all these things. And then we have the parents who allow their kids to just play, or maybe the parents work full time and there isn't a lot of opportunity for the students to have that free play even. A lot of kids, maybe they spend more time on devices. Like, we have all these variables. And because we live in a country where even within one state, you can drive an hour away and have a completely different demographic, that plays a big part. And it doesn't even matter the demographic, it just means that, like, the experiences vary. And so that comes up anytime we look at like assessment as a whole. We need to understand that there's like so many factors that contribute.
Right. So again, it's not that the researchers disagreed.
It just depends. You can find what you want.
Exactly. But they weren't arguing over whether learning matters. They were arguing about measurement, right? So how should summer learning be assessed? Which tests can be used? How large are the losses? Who, like you mentioned, who experiences them? Because we're all so different, and what counts as evidence? And even that NWEA study acknowledges that researchers continue to debate the magnitude of summer learning loss and whether different assessments are capturing the same phenomenon.
This makes me think too. So we talk about summer learning loss, and teachers, before you hear this is not a judgment. This was just an observation. I actually reached out to you and I said, I walked past a little girl in my corner and she didn't have her backpack or anything, and it's at least a full 2 weeks before school ends. And she's like, oh, we have our field day today. And I'm like, oh, have fun. It's so great. Enjoy the last couple weeks of school. And I was really thinking about, we talk about summer learning loss, but like the last 2 weeks of school, teachers, let's be honest, unless there's maybe usually our assessments are over, it's 2 weeks of fun, packing up. Typically our administrators want their grades earlier. Like, all these other things happen. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's reality, because if we moved it up, then it'd be this next, it's just what happens at the end of school year. So, we worry about this big summer loss, but like we also have these like random weeks throughout the year that also come into play. And so and I'm not trying to say that we need to make those like we bell to bell. No, there's
field day. We gotta have field day or something like it.
I know it's community building. There's other things that come into play. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying observationally, it's like, oh yeah, like those.
And that's like, I think, the nuance too of like the research, right? It's like, what counts as learning?
Yeah.
What counts as, how are we going to measure this? If they're just playing, we can't put it on an assessment.
We have 2 play episodes that will be coming in the future.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit about play. With my
absolutely.
Own kids. While researchers are measuring reading scores and math scores, and I'm reading about this, I'm looking at my own kids, and I'm watching them negotiate friendships and solve conflicts and create games and take risks and make decisions and learn how to fill long stretches of time that's unstructured. And I found myself, I'm looking at, these are 2 very different definitions of learning. You know what I mean? Like the scores on the test versus like what I'm watching my kids do. And like I said, I don't think the research isn't wrong, but I think it wasn't answering the only question worth asking. So like summer learning loss isn't fake, it's also not like simple. It's a measurement problem, I think, and as far as when we look at the research and try to apply that to like our own lives to think about.
Well, and is it really detrimental? Like, is that learning loss that big of a deal?
I don't think so.
Like, because like you said, what are we measuring, and how important?
It's more like a context problem, an equity problem.
Yeah, there's so many different dynamics within that.
Yeah, and for like the episode, it's kind of a definition problem. So the more I'm reflecting on this, the less interested I was in answering like, do children lose something during the summer, and more interested in what are we not measuring. So if learning only means what schools can assess, then summer can look like a problem. And if learning also happens through play and boredom and relationships and all of that, then summer can look different. So I'm trying to shift my lens into this different kind of learning for my sake and my children's sake, you know? I was looking for proof over and over, proof that they're learning, proof that I'm using my summer, proof that they're growing, you know, and I don't think...
Which is ironic for someone who absolutely hates standardized testing and chronic assessments, and
I know.
So it's interesting.
I think it's just part of me. It's ingrained in my experience and upbringing and all of that. So when I shift from thinking about, okay, they're losing things, to noticing all the things that they're gaining. And so the things that I kind of, as I'm reflecting, I started noticing, well, the first thing was the reading thing. You know, we're always worried about you even mentioned it right in the beginning, the reading thing. We're always worried about the kids reading. And so every summer my kids sign up at the public library for the summer reading program. The library comes, and they've done this even when I was a teacher, the public library would come and sell the program, right? And it's beautiful, wonderful. And they have such cool stuff going on. And every summer the kids are jacked about it, especially my second grader. You know, they're tracking books and logging their minutes online, and then they get to put in tickets for prizes and things like that. And they're always so excited about it in the beginning. But again, like for a little while. And after a few weeks, I mean, it's been a few weeks now, the incentives have worn off. But the reading didn't. They're all still reading.
I was going to ask which one is really, because I know.
Well, my second grader was the most into it, you know, so he's the one that I noticed the most, and he's our reader. But like I said, the reading didn't stop. He's still reading. If I'm worried about like whether or not he's reading, it's fine. Like, he is reading enough, or is he reading the right things, and whether it's counting, you know, but what I was watching him do is like choose books and abandon books, which I don't think we let kids do enough, to be quite honest. Just, you know what, I find new authors, and, you know, he's a big fan of interlibrary loan. He'll go out and click a bunch of new...
Oh, after my own heart.
But building a reading life that doesn't depend on a teacher assigning it or an incentivized program. You know? So I think it's, you know, makes me think about motivation and the difference between, you know, what we talk about a lot is this compliance, right? And so it's when they have opportunities to read what they want and when they want and how they want, it gives them that ownership. School requires reading, but, you know, summer, it helps give me a chance to watch what happens when nobody's requiring. I'm not, of course I'm going to suggest to go read, but I'm not like, you need to go read for 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that, but they do. They do anyway.
Gives them agency too.
Yeah. So another thing that happens a lot at home is boredom. So, so like we've mentioned before, like if you ask my kids what they want to do, it's go on the screen. It's like, can I have screen time? And so boredom is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me too. But amazing things happen when they're bored, and not before it. If I'm feeding them things to do, then they never have the opportunity to be bored. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time. I was just talking to my husband about this. I'm like, they need time to be bored, and they're going to be cranky, and they're going to be like, there's nothing to do. So, you know, but it takes time. It's not 5 minutes. It's not 10 minutes. It's long enough for them to wait for, you know, something else isn't going to happen. You know what I mean? They're waiting for like the next distraction, and when that doesn't come, then the opportunities change. Then they realize, okay, now can we build a fort? Can I bring the chairs up from downstairs? I have to tell you, the other day, they make up games a lot, and I think it's so funny and cute and silly. And the other day, my middle schooler had to clean out under her bed. And so, oh my gosh, the stuff that was under there. But I found her later with her brother and sister, and she was auctioning off the things that she found under her bed. She's like, and I mean, they weren't like actually giving her money.
And you're like, oh man, I wanted you to get rid of those, not give them to the next
she's
kid.
Like holding up this like half-eaten granola bar from under her bed. You know, she's like, how much are you gonna give me for this half-eaten granola bar, this thing of Play-Doh? It was hilarious. But anyway, they come up with these games, and they're outside in the trees, and they make up rules, and they create stories, and they're like drawing things, and anyway, but they need time, is what I'm getting at. And when we read like literature about play and play research, it's very similar, right? That when kids are given time for self-directed play, when we are not telling them what to do or where to go or what station to do, and they aren't just passing time, right? They are creating rules. They are negotiating disagreements. They're solving problems. The thing that's the most beautiful is they are managing their own attention. And like you said, that autonomy, they're making decisions.
Yeah. Taking risks, safe risks.
Many of the things we want children to learn are happening in those moments that can look from the outside, right, like they're just playing. But it's all those things we want kids to be able to do in life. And it's not that the kids weren't learning or aren't learning. It's that, sometimes it's hard for me to recognize what I can't measure, even knowing all of these things. Like I said, I think it's just in the back of my head, this like, are they doing enough? If I can't really measure it.
Well, and it's hard as a parent when your kids are like, I'm bored, and then they're arguing and cranky, and I want to eat some more, and you're like, okay, I'm not trying to manage your food, but also you aren't actually hungry, and I can only grocery shop once a week. So
and no, you cannot have any more goldfish.
No more
There's
goldfish.
Enough goldfish.
No more, like eat an apple. I don't want an apple. Well, then you're not hungry, because if you were hungry, you'd have an apple. So yeah, like I think as parents, it's hard too, and it's like, and then we look at ourselves and we're like, oh, we have a hard time being bored.
Yeah. So the other thing is that fighting. It's the conflict that I see all day, almost every day.
I have to laugh. So my niece comes over, and Amy brought her kids over, and they're all in the pool. And they weren't even having a big argument, but my niece is an only child, and my kids are obviously much older than her, so she doesn't spend a lot of time with them in conflict. And she comes in the house, and she's like, they're fighting over the goggles. And Amy's like, it's fine, it'll be fine. And she's like, but they're fighting. And she's like, no, it's fine, it'll work itself out. But she doesn't have this experience, and so Amy knows, like, as a mom, I know when to intervene, and they did take care of it, and the argument was taken care of. But it was just funny because she's like, oh, why are they fighting? I don't know what to do with this, from the only child's perspective.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to have conflicts that we work through. That's where that self-regulation comes in, and the ability to communicate with others, and you have to be able to compromise, because not everything's going to go your way in life. And so it doesn't always go that way. So maybe one of your kids wanted the goggles full time and they had to share.
Right.
Or we don't even know how it ended. They just stopped.
No, we didn't go out to check either. So yeah, they fight, they annoy each other, they disagree like all the time. And there are plenty of moments where it would be much easier for me to just go in and solve the problem. And don't get me wrong, I do intervene, especially just when I've had enough, but I get to decide who's right, I get to decide what's fair, and just to like make it stopped. But like you saw, like I work really hard to not be the referee, and that's one of the things I'll say is they have learned now, don't even come to me with this. I am not going to intervene. I am not your referee. But it took a long time to get to this point.
Well, and I think as parents we learn when we need to. But I do think, like you said, sometimes it's like, I just don't even want to deal with this right now. And it's hard to listen to them argue and not jump in and try to solve it for them.
Yeah. And so rethinking like what it meant for me to help, because I was reflecting on this with like my own students. I can remember like helping them through conflict. Like they'd come in from recess and they'd be fighting about something, and walking them through this, like, I wasn't there, here's what I see, here's your story, here's your story, and helping them negotiate and see both sides and come to like you mentioned, a compromise, and really facilitate the problem solving, you know? And so, but what I'm doing with a parent has kind of pushed me differently, because if I step in every time someone is frustrated or annoyed or disagrees, they are never going to get the chance to practice that themselves. And I mean, there were times in the classroom I would let them to, you know, figure it out, but more often I was intervening more in the classroom. So with my own children, that stepping in, it feels productive, and watching them struggle often doesn't. It feels like I want to rip my hair out, you know, but giving them that time and space to figure things out themselves is important. And all of the literature on play and child development, researchers describe these moments very differently than adults do. So you've mentioned Peter Gray before, whose work focuses on play and self-directed learning. He argues that when kids are allowed to direct their own play, they're learning how to negotiate rules and resolve disagreements and manage themselves without constant adult intervention. And again, many of those skills that we want kids to develop are being practiced in those moments. And so that kind of helps us think about like stepping back. And the National Academies on Pediatrics report on the power of play echoes those same ideas that Gray has, that play is context for developing those beautiful things like self-regulation and social competence and problem solving and executive functioning. And it's not after play, just through play.
Yes, through it.
Through play. And so that changes the way that we can look at arguments among our kids, doesn't it? You know, adults see arguing, but the researcher sees negotiation. Adults see disagreement over rules, and researchers see children learning how rules work. Adults see conflict, and researchers see opportunities to practice perspective taking and self-regulation and problem solving. And so as parents, like I said, it can be terribly annoying to see your kids arguing, but we can see it differently.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm laughing because my daughter was sharing with me, she works at a camp for younger kids, early childhood kids. And during camp, when everything's very regulated, it's an active camp. But when a few of the kids, arguing over places in line or wanting to chit chat instead of do the activity, or who won, who lost, like just these like constant arguments during this play. And she said, and at the end, finally, I was like, it doesn't really matter. This was just for fun. And she goes, and then I was pulling out of the parking lot and they're all at the park playing together. After all this fighting that I was like negotiating, and I'm like, yeah, but that's what happens. That's what they're learning. They're learning that it's okay to argue and then turn around and say, okay, we're friends. We just had to work through this. So we were talking. I'm like, I understand you're leading the camp. You can't have them arguing. You've got to keep it going forward. But like some of the arguments, you just got to stay out of.
Yeah, let them
it's
figure
a
it
part
out.
of their development through play.
Yeah. So bringing this back to like the summer learning loss and assessments and how we measure that, right, is like none of this shows up on a test. We're not giving a test on compromise or measuring how to successfully disagree with someone. But these are the kind of skills that we talk about, like we know kids need, we know adults need opportunities.
Well, and I mean, teachers will notice a child who's developed more in those social and emotional domains over the summer, the maturity, or we'll say, wow, they've really worked through some things that they struggled with last year, and they're not saying, oh, they read so much better than what I've heard, but no, they're handling relationships with others, they're self-regulating more. I mean, if we look at all the things that are happening in classrooms right now, I bet you teachers are wishing for that more than if they all over the summer grew to reading levels.
Yeah, right. Let them play.
Yeah, please.
Please let them play. And so, again, none of these things were showing up in the literature I was reading about summer learning loss, which then brought me back to this question, right? What do we think summer is for? Because if it's just to preserve this academic achievement, then things like, the boredom and the play and things like that are easy to overlook. But if summer is going to create this space where kids get to practice independence and responsibility and problem solving, then a lot of the most important growth is going to happen in places that those summer slide kind of, tests aren't going to be able to measure. And some of the growth that we're worried about is, we're not losing it at all. The whole time I'm thinking about the kids, I think teachers need the same kind of things too. Not the forts or the arguments with your siblings.
Or maybe, sometimes.
maybe. But more along the lines of like space and unstructured time and just the opportunity to like recover and to exist without immediately turning every moment into something productive. At least that's what I feel like I need. I'm in this phase where I feel like I need it. I don't really struggle to believe that my kids need it. You know, I can see the value in it for them, but for some reason I struggle to believe that I do. Mm-hmm. When the kids spend an afternoon building a fort, I can see the value. Or when they're playing with their friends and having the most amazing time, or I can see the value. But when I spend an afternoon reading or sitting by the pool or whatever, resting, or less, God forbid I don't get through everything on my to-do list for the day, then I start feeling like I wasted the entire day. That's why I brought it to talk about. That's why I wanted to look at this, because I feel like I trust more in the development in children than I do in the development of myself. Mm-hmm. So,
which is interesting, because then you ask yourself, what are you teaching your children through your actions? Because whether we like it or not, they're watching more and learning more than they are for what you say. So you tell me it's okay to relax, but I never see you. Or you spent that morning at the pool reading and relaxing, and now you're spazzing out when you get home because there's so much to do.
Oh, if that isn't me.
Well, I think it's so many of us. Yeah. I'm like, angry cleaning, and why aren't you getting angry cleaning with me? You're going to just pick up your feet? Like, why aren't you?
There? Well,
I went to work, and I came home, and I'm relaxing. Like, I have a husband who has no problem relaxing. Like, he gets a lot done, and he likes to keep moving, but when it's time for downtime, there's no guilt.
Oh, I love that for him.
Yeah, and I'm like, and I've gotten a lot better over the years. I have in my own transitions, but then sometimes I'll be like, oh, I need to at least go for a walk because we've relaxed for a long time and I'm getting antsy.
Yeah. Too much relaxing. So I went back into the reading, the literature, but this time I was looking at teachers, and so. What's kind of weird is how similar the conversation sounded. So one thing that kept showing up on teacher well-being and burnout was the idea that recovery isn't separate from effective teaching. It is part of effective teaching. So like articles I found from like Ed Week and Edutopia, and I'll link to all of these, educator wellness organizations, they repeatedly describe summer as a period when teachers recover mentally, emotionally, and physically from the demands of the school year. And you talked about this. We can all feel that, those of us who are teachers. And it's not because teachers are avoiding work, but like you said, because teaching is so demanding. It is such demanding work. And something I noticed about the authors was that they kept describing rest as prerequisite for things like creativity and reflection and resilience and sustained effectiveness. It's not a reward, it is a requirement.
You don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it.
I know. Why do I feel like that though? So the irony of all this is like, I know that we spend our careers helping kids grow, and that growth isn't always linear, and that development isn't always visible, but I wasn't extending that same grace or those ideas to myself. Mm-hmm. So I can see the kids doing these things during the summer and see the value in it and why it's important, but yeah, when it comes to me, I was still looking for proof. When I get to the end of the day, did I spend my time well? Am I doing enough? Did I waste my summer? All of those things. So what do we do with all of this information? Because I don't think the takeaway, I don't want to be like, don't care about reading, don't care about don't stop planning everything you have for the summer, forget it all, throw it away, they don't need it. But I don't think the takeaway is like summer learning loss isn't real. That's not what the research says either. Yeah. I mean, there are nuance to it, but there is some. But I think this looking into all of this has helped me kind of widen this lens and to pay more attention to different types of growth. It's not one type. It's not linear. It doesn't always have to look a certain way to be valuable. So for parents, I invite you to look again. So maybe your kid is doing the summer reading program. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're in camp, maybe they're playing with their friends and arguing with their siblings, or just wandering around the neighborhood. I would love to see kids wandering around the neighborhood a bit more. But anyway, for us as parents, maybe we can look at this as like, stop asking like, are they doing enough? And
Are we doing enough?
And are we doing enough?
Enough to make them do enough?
Yeah, are we planning enough? But is it like, what are they learning that I might not be noticing? So, some of the most important growth that's going to happen in the summer isn't the easiest to measure, but noticing the things that they are doing and they are learning and growing in different ways that don't have anything to do with academics necessarily, to notice those and to appreciate them.
To pause and notice. I mean, that's space in and of itself.
Yeah. And maybe, I think worrying a little bit less about optimizing everything. I say this knowing full well I'm going to need to hear it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Like, you don't need to optimize every minute. Every hour doesn't have to be educational, and every activity, we don't need a learning objective, and boredom isn't always a problem, and things like that. So as parents, just, thinking about some of the things that we might be tempted to like interrupt and intervene, might be those places where growth is actually happening, and just to kind of let that sit. And so for teachers, the invitation is very similar. It's like extending some of this grace to ourselves, and to trust that everything doesn't have to be so productive in these like obvious ways. Like I said, the literature on teacher well-being kept bringing me back to this idea, like recovery isn't separate from good teaching. It is absolutely necessary. It's part of it. Reflection matters, rest matters, relationships matter, and that space, it really is important. So I don't think we need to justify summer. Like, you can teach summer school if you want to.
Well, and we know that some of us do have to. We understand that we don't get into education for the paycheck. And even though a lot of people don't understand how paychecks work in education, yes, it's spread over those, and often, not all places, but spread over those 12 months, but it's still the same salary, it's just spread out. And I know there's some folks that do have to work summer school. They need that extra money, so they have to do those extra things. So, but still, even within that, how to not feel like all that extra time also has to be.
Yeah, because I don't think the value of summer is in like what we can produce by the end of it. It's got to be more about recovery, even when there's nothing to show for it, right? Or nothing tangible to show for it. I mean, there is something within us, right, when we give ourselves opportunities to rest.
Well, think about, that teacher that came back and had the right kind of summer versus the teacher who's like, ready to be back in routine, and I just did so much and I'm actually tired. I actually need, like, you can just see the difference in the way people come back.
So nurture yourselves, nurture your kids, right? So again, the connection that I've kind of been circling with this all episode is children don't need to justify every moment of play, and teachers don't need to justify every moment of rest. Summer is one of those few times that we get reminded that growth is happening long before there's evidence of it. So the reason that I brought this to take a second look is how quickly the calendar turns to July and I'm behind, right? Nothing is wrong. Nothing was wrong. My kids are doing exactly what kids should be doing in the summer. I have time, I have space, I have flexibility, and somehow I still feel like I need to be doing more. And that's not going to disappear overnight, but it's this reflecting on this process here has brought me to like being more intentional about what I'm doing. Like I said, it's not going to disappear, but I'm going to still wonder if they're reading enough, if I'm using my time, but I'm starting to notice it a little differently. I'm being a little more careful about what is counting for us at home. It might even not be things that I'm able to notice, but I'm hoping we can enjoy it a little bit more and take a little pressure off of ourselves.
I hope that for you too.
Yeah.
We may have to hold each other accountable to that.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for taking a second look, and we hope a lot of this resonated with you. Our next episode is going to lean into authentic self-care and, beyond the bubble baths. So thank you for joining us and taking a second look.
See you next time.